The history of colonization is a burden of the mind. To the victims of this evil act, it is a journey of yesterday that must never be retaken. The paths traveled in this journey is littered with misery and millions of lost souls all over the world. Colonization is the story of bondage and oppression. It is also the prison of the weak and poor. Colonization is indeed tyranny against humanity. It is the story of selfishness and aggression. Alas, man's inhumanity against his fellow human being. Colonization has both victims and victimizers. The victims of colonization suffer from one generation to the next, as the ills of colonization continues. Yes, it continues in different forms, especially in Africa. Yes, Africa, my continent of birth. So sad, colonization in Africa really never ended. Colonization is replaced with more a fancy term known as neo-colonization, an indirect form of slavery of the body and the mind of victims, especially those in African countries. The victims of colonization continues to suffer from generation to generation with their children both born and unborn. The history of colonization is a never-ending story. The spirit of the dead colonized continues to yearn for the living to remember them, as their bones scatter the soils of many nations, especially in Africa. The negative impact of colonization remains evident in the loss of culture, identity, traditions and natural resources of the victims of colonization. The generational poverty that has remained endemic in Africa is often attributed to the negative impact of colonization. The history of colonization reminds us the dark places where we have been and the humane choices we must make as humans on this planet Earth. For the victims of colonization, very, very bad memories of yesterday. History prevents the mistakes of yesterday. The history of colonization is the roadmap for future generations of the victims and victimizers. The burden of the history of colonization is ours to carry. Maggie's Poetry Corner. Maggie Chinyere Ofoha.